Hey guys, in this video I'm going to talk about a viral tweet that I recently had on the topic of Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, if you haven't been paying attention to the news, she was recently arrested in New Hampshire, and this is all tied to Epstein and all of that drama related to child trafficking. And when I tweeted this out, I basically said, hey, when I tweeted this, I was about 98% sure at the time that I tweeted this. I said, Ghislaine Maxwell is the owner of Maxwell Hill. Because I had looked at the data, and the main thing that got me is that this was a power user that has been posting on Reddit for 14 years. And this is probably the first time it's had a gap of this long. And the gap started right when Ghislaine Maxwell got arrested. So I was thinking, boy, isn't that peculiar? This power user account over at Reddit just happens to stop posting when Ghislaine Maxwell gets arrested. So that's really strange because she was the first person to get a million karma. Her world news were, as it says here, 30% of the posts there were by her at a certain point in time. And Gizmodo even did an article on her and named her the #1 most influential person in 2011. And I'll read an excerpt here. It says, who the hell is Maxwell Hill? Is the most influential person on the internet, and they don't even know who it is. And they say, is Max a he or a she? And this is interesting because allegedly Maxwell Hill previously admitted to be a man, but we'll dive into that in a moment here. A media pro or a high school student, a reporter, an editor, a dog, it doesn't matter. And they go on to say, Maxwell Hill is basically like Reddit personified. This is exactly, it's democratized publishing of media and whatever. So yeah, it got 6,500 retweets. Personally, I think this was actually censored by Twitter. I'm not sure about that, but I think this post was throttled because I've had viral tweets before. And once it got around like 5,000 tweets, this thing just like slowed to a crawl. So personally, I mean, it's no way to prove that, but that's my opinion. So I'm going to post it here on YouTube also, so that it can also get censored by YouTube. So we'll go through every social media platform and just keep getting censored. That's fine, but there's nothing to hide, right? Anyway, so this is the actual account here on Reddit. Let's go into full screen mode. Why not? And these are her most recent accounts, right? And the most recent one is 10 days ago, and everyone's still waiting with bated breath. We're waiting for a post from Maxwell Hill. I mean, if this is some Malaysian man, that's the official theory right now, is that it's a Malaysian man that is just busy with business or contracts or something right now. That's what we've been told. And because of the Reddit high brass, they seem really concerned about this getting tied to them. I could understand why, but the truth should come out. Does the truth matter? I think the truth matters. But here, as you can see, 10 days ago was the last time that she posted. We're still waiting. I even sent her some direct messages, so maybe she'll respond. I asked her if we could be friends. No response yet. So interestingly, on March 15th of 2010, Maxwell Hill was the Redditor of the day. And this is interesting because this was an opportunity for Maxwell to give us some information about himself, right? And right here at the top, you can see that this was 10 years ago. And Ghislaine claimed to be a 40-year-old male. And now I believe that this is just an outright lie. This is a cover. This is a cover and claims to be married. First of all, no married person has that much time to be posting on Reddit, especially not a 40-year-old male. Like what? Like, how do you have that much time? Talks about, and what's interesting is that she appears to have interests that are really consistent with someone that is British. Worked in the UK for many years, traveled to countries in the Far East. Doesn't live in the Far East, but has traveled to countries in the Far East. Which says that right there. Favorite word or expression is bollocks. Very British. And well, yeah, that's one of the key takeaways there. The age and the gender. which I believe is just an outright fabrication, and I'll show you why. Now, what's interesting is this is 2010, and 1 year later, Maxwell Hill writes an article about himself. It says right here, the story of the most successful man, woman on Reddit. So now he's like transitioning to a woman, I guess. Maybe as a digital tranny. I don't know what's going on here. But the point is that it's now, apparently he doesn't know what gender he is, or he's changing his story, or maybe the account's changed hands. I don't know. Maybe at some point, maybe Ghislaine Maxwell bought the account from him. I don't know. So that's interesting that he would conflict himself in this way. Moving on, this is her father, Ghislaine Maxwell's father. And it talks about his last name, Hawk, which is actually German for like hill or high, which is interesting because the name is Maxwell Hill. So that could possibly be an explanation of what the username ended up being. It's like, wow, this boomer seriously put her real name inside of her username. Maybe. I mean, you have to think this is 2006, and you know, people, I feel like boomers in general, the culture of boomers, like, even though she's people, I mean, just look at Facebook. Everyone started using their real names, right? They just jumped on there and everyone started signing up around 2007 using their real names. But before that, people were not really doing that. Kids that were like my age, growing up in the 80s and 90s, we were really accustomed to using aliases all the time because we'd play games, we'd play online games, and you didn't use your real name in an online game. So, you know, Generation Xers, we were used to just kind of coming up with names, and boomers didn't grow up with that. So they're accustomed to just using their real name, putting their real name right in the phone book. So yeah, maybe she just decided to use her last name, and she used Hill, and she grew up in that building, Maxwell Hill. I forget the name of it, but that's where she grew up. It was a name very similar to that. So maybe she just slammed them together as something that was meaningful to her. Could have been her. So that's some evidence that it could be pointing at her. Let's move over to the next. Basically talking about her father some more. Her father was a media tycoon. So this is a field, you know, my father, he's cybersecurity, and I'm a game developer, so I got into programming. So that's a really similar field, right? So it's not a stretch to think that Ghislaine would end up in the media field as well, and really interested in politics and world news. She's like the key moderator of world news, and her father was a big time media tycoon. So she would be a pretty good fit to be a power moderator on Reddit. And I found a clip from the Scotsman where it talks about, I'll just read this real quick. Ghislaine is her father's daughter. So they were very close. He made her a director of Oxford United FC, and Taylor made a New York company for her. She is extremely secretive about her affairs. So this is an extremely secretive person, and describes herself as an internet operator. And that's interesting because that kind of matches up with what Maxwell Hill is, an extremely secretive internet operator, right? And by the way, this article was, I believe came out in 2001, if I remember right. So I think this was even before. You can find it. Just search Scotsman Maxwell Hill. You'll Robert Maxwell. You'll find it's an article about him and his children. And so yeah, the thing about Maxwell Hill is this individual is so secretive that when Reddit invited her to like a big party to celebrate, you know, they actually denied and never came to any events like that, never came to any parties. So this was an individual who was not only extremely powerful on Reddit, but also very secretive. So again, I would suggest that is more evidence that this could be Ghislaine Maxwell. Now, if it's a Malaysian man, I would find it very interesting that they're really into the 2X chromosome subreddit. I don't know about you, but I never went there. When I used to use Reddit years ago, I'm recovering. I don't use it anymore. But years ago, when I did use Reddit, I was aware of this subreddit, but I didn't use it because this was really a 2X chromosomes. It's a subreddit for females. It's both serious and silly and intended for women's perspectives. Well, what do you know? Let's see. Did I lose that tab? Where did it go? So, excuse me for a moment. What I'm going to have to do. Somehow I lost that, so I'm going to have to open it up here. And if I punch it in, oops. This right here. As you can see, she has a ton of posts. Somehow I lost this tab. I thought I had it, but I guess somehow I misplaced it. And, she has a ton of posts in... Oh, wait. No, I want specifically 2X chromosomes. Yeah, so these are all the 2X chromosomes posts. As you can see, /2X chromosomes. These are all posts in 2X chromosomes. And there's a lot of them. And they're all posted by Maxwell Hill. So there's a ton of these. I mean, pages and pages of them. So, I don't know. Do you think a Malaysian man would post this much on 2X chromosomes? I wouldn't think so. But, so again, that's more evidence that I would suggest points at it being a female. Now, here's some interesting evidence related to pick up a penguin, which may seem like an innocuous reference. But what this is a reference to a 70s British candy bar commercial. And I'll play the video. As you can see, it's a silly little commercial. I'm not going to play the audio. But as you can see, that's like the little jingle, pick up a penguin chocolate bar, right? And this is a very, there it is, pick up a penguin, a British chocolate bar. Then YouTube recommends some British advertisements to me. So it's interesting that she would make an extremely obscure British reference as a Malaysian man. So this is pointing towards it being a British person. It was who would be born around, 1961. And then grow up in the 70s and be very, those are her formative years. And then she remembers this pick up a penguin jingle from her childhood. Makes sense to me. In this post, this is a post about the Catholic Church and some priest child abuse story that came out. This is only 8 months ago. And she says in response to this guy who says, nuns don't have the insane track record of raping children like priests do. And she's like, hold on a minute, let me correct you. First thing she says is not having a go at you, which by the way is like the most British phrase I've ever heard. And says, probably not as common as priests, but nuns do commit child abuse also. I have a look at this journal article. So the title she uses is A Brief Examination of Pedophilia and Sexual Abuse Committed by Nuns Within the Catholic Church. So she's like, hold up. Ladies can do child abuse too. Maybe she's an expert. I don't know. Here's a quick summary of the kind of subreddits she's interested in. World news, #1 by far. Politics, environment, technology, science, futurology. She's interested in the future. Food for thought, greed, cyber laws, conservation, news, everything science. Catholicism. I mean, this paints a picture. 2X chroma. This is not the complete history, by the way. This is only like the last 1,000 posts, just so you know. Don't get the impression this is everything she's ever posted, because she's had many 2X chromosomes posts, as you saw. But this is just as of late. Maybe she used it more in the past and decided to stop using it. That's what it looks like. These are the subreddits that she's the moderator of. World news, travel, economics, web design. Really, that surprises me. I wonder if she did some web development. That would be interesting. Maybe we could talk. Maybe we could share some pro tips on web design, Ghislaine, let me know. Send me a DM. I already DM'd you on Reddit. Just send me a message and we'll talk. We'll talk. Maybe I'll make a website for you. I don't know. Health, bad cop, no donut. So she appears to be maybe she's kind of has disdain for police, law enforcement, cyber laws, greed, and enviro action. So that kind of paints a picture what kind of person Ghislaine Maxwell is, what kind of interest she has. And it seems to line up with Maxwell Hill quite a lot. Drinking coffee today. Good stuff. Okay. So in this one I say, it's interesting that Maxwell Hill never references herself. So this is someone who, so we know that Ghislaine Maxwell is really interested in oceans and has been a very public figure. She started the Terramar project. She's the figurehead there. And Maxwell Hill is really into that topic too. So you would think maybe Maxwell Hill would post at least one article about Ghislaine Maxwell. But in fact, there's not a single reference in any of the articles she posted about Ghislaine Maxwell. So I don't know if that tells me that she doesn't want to talk about herself. Maybe she doesn't want to create suspicion or draw attention to herself or create connections. And she does the same thing with Epstein too. Like Epstein was big in the news, right? There's a Netflix documentary. There's all this stuff, but she doesn't really talk about that. Like she doesn't want to tie herself to that, or it's too close to home, so she doesn't want to criticize it or draw attention to it. And that's what I say in this post as well. Her little partner in crime and utensil, I'm not going to get into that individual. I know who that individual is, but I'm not going to get into it in this video. And she doesn't really, these are all the posts about Epstein, whether it's in the comments or in the post title. And she really only has like one or two over 14 years, which is interesting because she's really interested in those kind of topics. She's really interested in age of consent laws. She posts about that quite a bit. Now here is the epic post by Ellen Powell. I have no idea how this post is still up. I don't know what to make of this. Okay, so Ellen Powell says, she was at the Kleiner party in 2011, but I had no desire to meet with her, much less have a photo taken with her. So Ellen did not want to associate with Ghislaine Maxwell. We knew about her supplying underage girls for sex, but I guess that was fine with the cool people who managed the tightly controlled guest list. This is incredible, dude. Like, how does this tweet exist? This is the woman who used to run Reddit. Hey, you hover her and she's like ex-Reddit. She was the boss, okay, of Reddit. She wanted to make changes at Reddit. She was the most powerful person. She could have made some waves and probably could have changed it, depending on what her bosses wanted. But it's like, what do you even make of this? Like, this was after Ghislaine Maxwell got arrested. So she's coming out and tweeting this and letting everyone know, hey, we knew pedophilia was going on. Underage girls getting trafficked for, so she's saying, I know girls are getting supplied for dude, like, how? So like, isn't she kind of, this is just unbelievable to me. Like, obviously she's probably going to be asked some questions, and this tweet is still public. This is just unbelievable to me. So this ties Ghislaine Maxwell to Reddit. So at this point, you have to wonder if Reddit is now subject to RICO laws, because they may be a criminal enterprise that are protecting pedophiles, giving aid and comfort to people who are involved with child trafficking. So I mean, if I was a Fed, I would say there's enough evidence here to go in and shut down Reddit servers for an investigation, because who knows? Who knows how much evidence has already been destroyed at this point? That's my opinion. I mean, why not? I mean, they went in and they shut down the Italian mafia for this and that because they're involved in organized criminal activity. You know, it would be the same justification to go in and shut down Reddit servers, because all the high brass at Reddit knew about this, and there's like all of these very unsavory things going on in the background. And here's another headline where it says, Ellen Powell says tech firm invited Ghislaine Maxwell to a party after reports she had supplied girls for sex. That's just a headline related to that. Go back in full screen. It looks cooler. Now, this is an interesting post, very important data related to her birth date. Maxwell Hill says, I guess I'm doomed because I'm born in December. I was like, well, but winter doesn't officially start until the 21st. And then she says, doesn't help, dude. It's past that date, sad face. And then someone asks her, Jesus, is that you? And, you know, we celebrate Christmas on December 25th, right? Like that's the alleged birth date, which isn't really his birth date. But traditionally, we celebrate the birthday on December 25th, right? Well, what do you know? Her birthday is December 25th. Isn't that interesting? Let me turn that stupid noise off. It's annoying. So yeah, she was born December 25th, and she denies. She doesn't respond to this. She doesn't say, haha, not the 25th. She doesn't say that. But she could have, but she didn't. So that's interesting. So it's at least bare minimum narrowed down 21st to the December 31st. So we're talking 10 days, right? So it's very close. Here's a post talking about gaps in her timeline. Now, not the strongest evidence in my opinion, but it is interesting. So if you go on the Wayback Machine, December 10th, she has, it's hard for you to see, but you can go on the way. This image was making rounds in mainstream news articles and everything, so you should be able to find this. I could blow it up if you want me to, but that gets annoying. Basically, there's a 3-day gap here, and the Kleiner party was, you know, around the 9th, and she didn't post from December 7th to the 10th. So, you know, it's these little gaps that just happen to line up with major events for Ghislaine Maxwell, such as Kleiner's party, her mother's death, and when she's at the Terramar Project giving speeches, public speeches and such. Now, is this like the strongest evidence? No, but it is evidence that does line up. If she's in a public spot and she can't post, that tells me, well, okay, that's just another drop in the bucket in terms of the body of evidence. So 7 years ago, she, you know, posted this article. This is a pretty gross one. Is an article with the title, 3 Strong Reasons Child Porn Must Be Legalized in the Coming Decade. Now, I understand that just because you share an article on Reddit, it doesn't mean it's an endorsement, right? Just like on Twitter, if you retweet something, it doesn't necessarily mean that you endorse it. In fact, sometimes you retweet things just because you think it's ridiculous and you want to draw attention to how ridiculous it is, or you want to kind of see your followers see it so that they can comment on it, or, you know, kind of like have a little brigade go in and call them dumb or whatever. But I understand all that. But the fact that you would post this article combined with the fact that she's also involved, you know, Ghislaine Maxwell was, you know, arrested for child trafficking. I don't even know what the charges are, to be honest. Was it child trafficking? I guess so. That's my assumption. I haven't seen the exact things exact list that she's been arrested for. And yeah, what's strange about this is some guy named Goatstein comes in and he's like, oh, let me summarize this for you. I'm not going to read all that, but basically, it made me wonder, is that Epstein replying? That's kind of weird. His name is Goatstein. I don't know, but that's interesting. And she would post something like that. And I thought this was strange. She had this comment in World News that said, can it be some mystical island name? It would be so cool. So they're talking about some kind of, this wasn't a reference to St. James or anything like that. But this is some other island that they were talking about. In fact, it's this one right here. Tiny Pacific nation of Cook Islands is considering changing its name to something that reflects its Polynesian culture, rather than honoring the British explorer James Cook. Now, what's strange is, for some reason, since this was all archived, for whatever reason, that comment's gone now. I don't know why. Like, comments are getting deleted from Reddit. And I don't know what's the extent of the deletions, which is why I think there's another reason we should be investigating, like, why are certain comments getting deleted? That's a good question, don't you think? This is a link to that exact comment, and it's gone. So I don't know. There's nothing to hide, and it's a Malaysian man. Then why are we going and deleting comments while this person is not posting? I don't know. I mean, I don't run from the cops. I just let them arrest me because I'm innocent, right? So what do I have to worry about? You only run when you have something you're concerned about. Let's see. So, Bitcoin, as she has a strong interest in the topic of cryptocurrency, she famously had a spat with Elon Musk. And she has tons of posts about cryptocurrency. In fact, her last post was actually about cryptocurrency, about someone transferring almost $1 billion in Bitcoin. And in fact, that's right here at the top. Someone mysteriously sent almost 1 billion Bitcoin. Wouldn't it be funny if that was her? I think that'd be pretty funny. I don't know if it's her. But her last post, this was 2 days ago, I screen capped this. She says, someone mysteriously sent 1 billion. So that'd be amazing if that was actually her. So here's a very peculiar interest. Something most of us are not into because it's for rich folks, okay? I've never been to a horse race. I'm not a socialite. I'm not descended from royalty or anything like that. But she seems to have a very sharp knowledge about horse racing. Like she knows all of the, look at this, is like really, like I could never type this up. I would never post a comment like this. This is really specific knowledge about horse racing. I don't know what 6:10 bath means. I don't know what that means. But it's something about betting on horses. It looks like they're betting on horses. And whoever cropped this image, it is the worst image I've ever seen. You did a terrible job cropping this. You're fired. But here's the real image. Her at the horse races with these people. She's having a good old time over at the horse races in her key lime dress. And their cool little top hats. So, I mean, is this a Malaysian man? Or is this someone who goes to horse races and is involved with high society culture? Looks like high society to me. She knows what the word, she knows all about this word, ephebophilia. It's a very specific type of pedophilia. She comments, seems to have a lot of strong opinions about this. 13 years old, boggles the mind. Can marry and have sex? She's basically talking about age of consent laws in the United States, and she has multiple posts where she's talking about age of consent laws in various states. Now, and it's interesting that she even mentions New Hampshire, which is where she was arrested. Seems to have specific knowledge about that. And she kind of has a back and forth with this guy, Unit Mike. And I guess they think it may be as low as 12 in West Virginia. So I don't know. I'm not saying having knowledge of that topic is a bad thing, but, you know, taking all of these pieces and putting them together does make it interesting. It's more compelling when you put it all together. It paints a picture, right? Like, it's not illegal to talk about age of consent laws. Of course not. In fact, the Bible talks about age of consent laws, and there's rules about, when a woman is allowed to consent and get married, and how that all is supposed to work. And every country on earth has age of consent laws. Every society draws a line somewhere from a legal standpoint and has rules about how that works. And if the father or guardians or whoever consents, that can usually override whatever, like, what do they call it, the statutory rapes laws. Like, if you're 19 and you're dating a 17-year-old, like, I think you can only get in trouble if, like, the guardians are like, no, you need to cease and desist, sort of thing. So anyway, but this video is not about age of consent laws, but that's just another data point, something that she appears very interested in. We're talking about all of her interests. Now here she another topic she is very interested in, which I've mentioned before, are oceans, which makes a lot of sense because she has given speeches on video for the Terramar project. She's like the figurehead of the Terramar project, which is all about ocean conservation and the environment, and how such a big part of the commons, she calls the ocean, she references it as the commons that we all technically own, and how we need to take care of it, and how it has such a big impact on the world, and all this stuff. Well, she has tons of posts about, I just searched ocean and author Maxwell Hill, and sure enough, I mean, this is one of her big interests. Like, how specific can you get? Who has like a hardcore passionate interest in the ocean? Not that many people, right? So this really kind of narrows it down in my mind. Maxwell Hill is also really into the ocean, has tons of posts. It goes on and on and on, but never mentions Ghislaine Maxwell, which is interesting. It doesn't mention herself, doesn't want to make that connection. And we even have this video here.
On the stage here we have
I'm gonna mute that because you don't want to hear that. But there she is talking about, there's Maxwell Hill talking about the ocean. She's got all kinds of opinions about the ocean. She'll tell you all about it. You can go check this video out yourself. So yeah, very interesting. That's all I got. I had other tweets, other things that I felt like were weaker parts of evidence, but I think I've presented the most important data points here. There are all kinds of rabbit trails in this discussion going down different paths, and some of the data is weaker, some of it's stronger. I tried to pick the stuff that was the most relevant, stuff that tried to paint a picture about her interests and how it lines up with Maxwell Hill's interests and how that corroborates so strongly. In fact, I can't find an interest that Maxwell Hill has that she doesn't have, or one that she has that he doesn't have, or he, because allegedly it's a Malaysian man. But yeah, so that's really it. That's all I wanted to present in this video. You decide for yourself. I'm just the messenger. I'm just showing you data. In my opinion, I 99.9% believe Maxwell Hill is controlled by Ghislaine Maxwell. That is my opinion. And I think it should be investigated and looked at, and I think someone should start asking questions at reddit.com. That's my opinion. Anyway, that's it for this video, guys. I'll see you next time.